Hey, DTA Nation, Ted here. We are excited to have Old Southern Barbecue riding with us again for the 2026 season. If you're craving great barbecue in the metro area, visit one of their 5 metro locations, or you can go onto their website, oldsouthernbarbecue.com, and order food from there. In addition, use DTA 15 to get 15% off any of their sauces, rubs, or merch in their online store. Now back to the show.
And welcome to Down the Alley. This is PMAC.
And Ted T.S. Spirides.
And the source.
Another week, Section 3 week, the People's Section. I don't know about you guys. I've been starting to talk to people about Section 3. People are starting to talk to me about Section 3 because they know it's coming up. They're excited about Section 3. Not that Section 1 and 2, aren't exciting. At least on the boys' side, I'm hearing more boys chatter. Maybe the source is hearing more girls chatter. On the boys' side, though, Section 3, I think people are a little more interested about. Might get a couple listener viewership might go up this week. I don't know. That's what I'm being told.
Yeah, I had a couple of sources reach out, do a little lacrosse chat. So yeah, I think the people are getting excited. Season's catching up. Warm weather is helping. Let's go get them.
Yeah, Section 3 has always been, over the last few years, kind of a toss-up, a lot of interesting storylines, kind of, I don't know if it's kind of anybody's game. I think there's always a favorite, but there's been some exciting twists and turns in Section 3 on boys and girls. And, one other thing, too, is this is the East Side now. We're in an East Side section, and we're all South suburban, people. So the East Side gets some love now. We get to chat with some people, get some texts from people, as you guys have been getting, about East Side lacrosse.
A couple of great guests. We'll get to those people in a little bit. But before we get to them, it's starting to warm up, as the source said. But it's still a great time to barbecue, right? It's been cold. I haven't done a lot of barbecuing myself lately. But as it warms up, barbecue season's coming. What does OSB have cooking up?
Yeah, the big thing right now, I think they're making the push, is just to make sure that everybody's getting on the grad party radar, or just any summer party. It doesn't have to be a graduation, but if you're looking to get catering, as we know, summer weekends fill up pretty quickly. And you want to get that stuff hammered down before it's too late. You don't want to be scrambling to feed the people in the last minute. So I would say that's the big promotional thing right now. But like you said, the weather, you could go get some sauces and rubs and start doing your own barbecue using DTA 15, get 15% off, or just hit up one of the locations. Go out, have some barbecue, maybe walk a main street if it's nice enough. There's some options there. But again, Old Southern Barbecue, bringing us this episode, riding with us again in 2026.
No, yeah, love it. Old Southern Barbecue. I kind of during the grad party season, I run into them multiple times every summer. And people are like, hey, like this is your thing. I'm like, it's not my thing. It ain't my company, but glad that people are enjoying it. Yeah, I love running into it, when I'm out visiting, usually players. DTA Nation has been supporting Old Southern Barbecue. If you're looking for something, I've seen it at grad parties multiple times every year. We've used them for various lacrosse events, coaches conventions, things of that nature. So, speaking of coaches, events, we've got one coming up. The date of this drop, this weekend here, I've got the hat. I've got the new quarter zip that's going to be available. Some people ordered it, kind of during registration for the Invitational. Extras will be sold at the Invitational, limited supply until they sell out. So, fired up for the Invitational. Us three are all going to be golfing. The source has kind of a source crew along with Katie. I think just like at the Open, the source is going to probably be carrying that squad. Ted, you got a rowdy crew. source. What are you guys thinking about this invitational here coming up February 21st this weekend, this Saturday?
Coach Anna Bowlesby has been in the simulator practicing and practicing and getting lessons. She's excited for this. She's pumped. I don't see how we don't compete.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's indoor event, so it's a rain or shine event, so that's always good in a Minnesota winter. Um, it doesn't surprise me. Coach Bowlesby is taken to the next level. You bring a state championship winning coach onto your team, and she's going to make sure that she's ready to roll, be well prepared. And before we jump to our guests, I want to go back to last week. PMAC had a rant or something that triggered him last week, and we were going to talk about it, but we said no, we're going to wait on this. I think this is going to be the start of the Section 3 episode before the guests arrive. PMAC, what bothered you last week? Do you even remember?
I
I've been
have it
wait-
written down.
I've been waiting all week. I've been waiting all week to hear
You've been
this.
waiting all week. This was, one of those reels. I think it's a reel on Instagram. You're scrolling, late at night, just killing time. Should be sleeping, but I'm not. And I think this came across on a reel, and the question was, why this is coming up? This shouldn't be what's coming up late on a Thursday night. When I'm doom scrolling. Give me some entertainment. No, it's giving me something to. I don't know if this grinded my gears. It got my thought, my mind rolling for sure. But it went down the rabbit hole of did positionless offense kill the midi position? That's like the main theme. It went down, the rabbit hole of, the Miles Jones, type midi who big downhill dodger, offensive midi. Not that they can't do anything else, but they can't do anything else necessarily. You get what I'm saying there. I don't know. I don't know if this is a hot take. I don't know if this guy, or if it's not. If it did kill the midi, if it didn't kill the midi, I don't know. I thought it was interesting enough to bring up. Ted, you're the offensive guy. Is the midi position dead? Do you not look at midis anymore, or do you need that role filled? Do you still need that midi type athlete somewhere in your offense?
So I think this is a great question. And yeah, it's not something you need at 10 o'clock at night as a lacrosse coach before you go to bed. I actually think positionless offense maybe killed the attack position a little bit more than the midi position. I view positionless more like you have 6 middies on the field and you don't really have like a true feeder quarterback ex-attackman type role. I think it's a lot more above the cage type stuff. But I think this might be a conversation for another time, but I think I think positionless offense stemmed from something else that was the catalyst, and that was the death of the two-way midi. I think when teams started having O specialist middies and D specialist middies, and they were subbing everybody off anyways, you kind of lost really the separation between midi and attack because you just had offensive guys and defensive guys. And then that kind of spun to, all right, now I just have O guys. All right, well, they're all middies now. And you don't really I mean, I guess every skill set's a little bit different, but in general, I kind of personally see all 6 guys as midfielders as opposed to 3 attack and 3 middies.
Interesting. You flipped it. You flipped it from this person's perspective. I should have wrote down who it came from. Maybe I saved it. I'll look that up in a little bit. Interesting. You think the attackman's dead, not the midi.
Yeah, it's not that it's dead, but I think just with specializing O and D middies now, you kind of just have offensive guys and defensive guys, and that maybe in some offenses killed the midi, and maybe in others it killed the attackman. But I think midfield 15, 20 years ago, and even I would say in the girls' game, it's still very much you have to play defense You have to play two-way. You have to run up and down the field. You got to log miles. And in a lot of cases on the boys' side, an O-Midi would never dare cross the midline and go play defense. They're just going to sprint off the field. I'd rather give up a 6-on-3 than go out and get stuck on defense. And so I think it was just the sub game in the boys' side of things that kind of killed maybe the true midfield position.
Love it. Love it. Maybe we'll dive more into that later. We've got our first guest of the night, B-Willy, Brian Willson out of Hastings, Minnesota. Camera's either backwards, camera's either the wrong camera, camera's now off. I don't know where B-Willy is.
Camera's down. Camera down. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you. The mic is working. Camera's not.
Yeah,
not surprised with this kind of guy. The energy he brings.
We got a cracked surface. We got a cracked surface. We're fine. We'll figure it out. Oh,
I don't know what cracked surface means, but let's crack surface.
Hey, buddies.
B-Willy.
How's it going, guys?
Welcome to Down the Alley.
How's it going?
Hey, we're buzzing. The source has been sourcing all week. And we're ready for the people's section in section 3. B-Willy, I heard you're having a week.
Yeah, absolutely. We're having a good week. We're bringing positive energy this year. I've finding joy in coaching again. I feel like a lot of the times we're caught up with metrics of, pushing from ADs saying, hey, we really got to get numbers up, or hey, from community members, hey, when's this going on? When's that going on? And sometimes I've found myself not really finding the forest through the trees. So I've had to take a step back the last couple of weeks and really appreciate what's going on and what I can do. And I've actually really found joy in coaching again, which is, as many of people know who coach a lot year round for multiple sports, it gets a little much after a while. So we're having a positive week and glass half full going into the next few weeks.
Section 3. I don't know where to start. This is the people's section. You've got some legendary teams that have come out of this section. Egan in 2017.
Yep.
Egan 2017, legendary team. Recent history. Woodbury's had some sweet teams. CDH has had a great run. STA in the mix. Eastridge, I'm sure we'll get to them.
Yeah.
Section 3, the people's section. It's anyone's section. It's the people's section. Year after year, you guys just change who's coming out of it. A lot of parity. I think it's our favorite thing about Section 3. B-Willy, what do you have to say about recent history, the history of the section? You've been a part of it with Hastings for a handful of years plus now. I'm not sure.
This will be year 10 of being a part
year
of the
10,
staff.
not a big deal. Give us a little brief history of the people's section.
I think we did this last year, but I think pretty traditionally the first seed never wins the section tournament. Even last year, Eastridge was technically the 2 seed in the section, and they beat St. Thomas. So traditionally, the seeding's always tight. There's always at least 2 triangles of we beat, circle of sucks, as some people know, where one team beats one team, another, where everybody beats each other. So it makes those section meetings pretty long. Especially for top 3 and then 4 through 6. So it's always an interesting section. This year I see it shaping up a little differently, but that's always fun because you kind of, you kind of have a Goliath that some Davids can slay. So I'm in for it. So.
No, I'm here for it. We'll kind of run through this section as we look forward now. Starting at the top, you mentioned STA, last year's number 1 seed. They ended up being the runner-up of Section 3. STA, what do we have on them? I know they lost a couple of key 2025s. We got Camden graduated, returning Meisterling. That's a name. Hopefully I said it maybe close to correct. Marks Larson on the defensive end. We got some scoring coming back. Ted, B-Willy, what do we have on STA, the all-boys school, getting ready for 2026?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on some of the notes. I will say before I dove into this section, I kind of had the feeling like Eastridge, far and away the best team. They're the heavy favorites. That was kind of my feeling going in without even looking at it. But as I dove into St. Thomas Academy, I think everybody knows, Max Candon playing at St. Joseph's now, amazing player, great athlete. Losing him will be something they have to figure out. But like PMAX said, they get Meisterling, Marks, and Larson back on the defensive end. They get their first, second, third, and fourth scorers back in Luke Hudson, who's going to Bucknell, Luca Pedri, Thomas Bushlack, and Nathan Williams. Is that Williams? Is that one of the Williams family, the Ben Williams, Luke Williams family? I don't know. But almost all their scoring, at least their main guys, are back. And then they have a goalie that's coming back, senior Thomas Wicks, who split time last year. So plenty of experience. So I kind of am like, all right, they were the 1 seed last year. They lost one guy. That was like a key guy. But I feel like there's a lot of guys coming back on this team.
100%. I think that, uh, especially, I really like their defensive core, honestly. I mean, I think that Max, kind of was always the showstopper, stole the show kind of a lot, kind of drew a lot of attention. Oh, don't dodge on Max, don't dodge on Max. But I do find that even some of our talented players last year struggled to dodge against Larson and Meisterling. So I'm curious to see how they do. Sometimes, not so much on the defensive end, but sometimes you'll see teams that lose one of those key players, one of those superstars, and they sometimes will perform better defensively, and I'm not saying I'm not saying St. Thomas performed poorly defensively. I think they were very stout, but I do think that sometimes when you lose somebody that talented, other kids feel the need that they need to step up and fill those shoes, or as a unit, they're like, okay, hey guys, Max isn't here to bail us out with a crazy clear or something. We have to collectively work harder. So I'm curious to see what they do. I think they're a solid, well-rounded team. They're going to be. I flip a coin with them and Eastridge, who's the 1 and who's the 2 seed this season. So
Yeah, and I think with a team like St. Thomas, being a private school, you don't always necessarily know, where the kids are coming from that are coming up. That freshman class, they could be getting kids from multiple places. So that's kind of a unknown for myself. And then, there could be transfers, or kids coming into the school. That's always a factor. But one thing they did last year is really invested a lot into their middle school program, like their 7-8 team. So they actually ran a St. Thomas middle school team. I don't know if other private schools do this. It sounded kind of like a newer thing to me, and they got some exposure to that varsity staff, got to do some stuff in the spring. I don't know how much they played games or if it was more of a training thing, but at least now with, maybe that 8th grade group coming in, they know the coaches, they kind of know the system, they feel like they're part of the program. That could be something that benefits them from a depth perspective, which is usually maybe the kind of the Achilles heel of private schools that have smaller numbers, is depth. But now they kind of have a pipeline and they have a place to kind of develop some kids. So I like the STA core a lot. I'm interested to see how this team pans out in 26.
I will piggyback a little bit on that middle school teams. I've noticed a trend with a handful of the private schools in the area. They've started to develop middle school teams. I know that speaking with a couple of the guys on the Hill Booster board, that they've got a middle school team. Obviously, both St. Thomas and Cretan Durham Hall are going to benefit from the capital city youth program growing. I think that they've got a solid core, and I have seen, especially in our section on this side of town, kind of a resurgence when it comes to a handful of youth programs. But specifically, those middle school teams like Hill Murray, Cretan, St. Thomas all have these middle school programs now too, where they're going to be able to feed into them as long as those kids stay at that private school. So
Love it. If those private schools and resurging youth programs, middle school programs need some scrimmages, hit me up. We're always looking for more games in Prior Lake. So, free shout out there. Eastridge, We started to mention them. The number 2 seed last year. My sources are saying this could be the team to beat out of the people's section. STA though, as I hear you guys talk, they got their core. They may have some depth. They've got they've got the development, building here. Eastridge, maybe there's a little more flash, a couple of big names. What's gonna win? What's gonna which battle? Which team is gonna battle between these two? I don't know. Is this just all flash, no sizzle, or is Eastridge? Do they have the sizzle to come back in 2026 here?
Yeah, I'll start. I think they had an amazing season last year. They kind of had that, I'll call it an upset win at state against BSM in the quarterfinals. I don't care what anybody says about BSM, to beat Benilde in a state tournament game, is something to kind of stamp your season. So I think they were doing a lot of nice things. They do lose a couple offensive middies. Oliver Stahlsberg and Mac O'Brien, they together combined for 78 points last year. So I think they're going to have to replace some at the midfield, but I think it all starts with the key positions. They got a Division I commit faceoff guy, middle camp. They got a Division I commit goalie, Shanley. If you got studs at faceoff and goalie, you're going to get possessions, and possessions give you a really good chance to win lacrosse games. So I'll start there before we dive in maybe to their offense and defense. Middle camp and Shanley. B-Willy, what do you got on them?
Those who are around the game know that if you've got a good goalie and then you've got a good face-off guy, the world's your oyster. You can't really go wrong with that. If I had to pick a position where it's like, hey, you can pick 2 D1 commits, I'm definitely picking a Fogo and a goalie, and then probably an OSM because you need somebody to. If you have a good Fogo and you can't anybody who can scoop up the ball, what's the point? But that being said, that's not. It's crazy when you say, hey, we got a D1 commit at goalie and a D1 commit at Fogo, and it's not the talking point of this team. The talking point of this team is a stacked attack line. You have an Air Force commit in Caden Barron. They got a transfer from Park with Bradley Johnson, who's a Delphi commit, and then you also have Austin Griffin, who's an Anderson commit. So you have 2 D1 commits and a high D2 school commit on your attack line. It's one of those things where it's like, is it going to be too much talent? And I know that's such a weird thing to say, but sometimes you get a handful of these kids that, you get so much talent there, it's going to find a way and make sure that their offensive coordinator with Amar, and I know he will, understands that they have to share the ball and buy into their team system offensively. Otherwise, they're going to have a lot of issues. And I'm not really too concerned. Their coaching staff is very strict, and I understand that they're going to be able to get them whipped up into shape and understand that when's the right time to shoot the ball and play offense. So I'm curious to see what they're going to be like. Are they going to be like a 2017 Egan and put up, hundreds of goals this year, or is they just eat themselves alive? But having Shanley on the backside and having middle camp at the X, I see this team doing really good things. It's just a matter of can their polls play up to par, and if one of their starters go down, do they have the depth at pull in order to back that up? So,
Yeah. Go ahead, BMAC.
For somebody who's not a part of Section 3, myself, I run into some teams like Egan out of Section 3, but STA and Eastridge, I'm not seeing these two teams personally on a regular basis. What are these two teams? What's their style of play? How are they going to clash? Is one super high scoring, like you're saying? Like, could they be, kind of more a high flying offense like Egan in 2016? And is STA different? Or, what do you expect out of these two teams in terms of style of play, when they clash at some point this season?
I really think that what we're gonna see here is the difference between a high flying offense in Eastridge and a structured, well rounded team in St. Thomas. You know, the peaks might not be as high on St. Thomas, but the valleys aren't as low, if that makes sense, right? They've got a very well rounded team. I really think the difference between these two teams is who's going to be more disciplined. And I'm not necessarily talking about who's going to stay out of the box, but maybe who's going to buy into the system more? Who is going to be able to clear the ball better? Is Eastridge going to struggle if they throw the ball away on offense and suddenly they're stuck in the defensive end? Are they going to struggle with clearing? And I mean, hopefully with Shanley's maturity and with being a junior, he can lead the clear. But it's something that you always got to look into. I feel like a lot of coaches overlook the clearing game, and sometimes it can cause a problem. I mean, because it's not as flashy, it's not as fun. It's super fun having a high scoring, offense that's unique or exotic. Yeah, and it's also super fun having a defense that just eats people alive and shuts them down. But if you can't clear the ball and win the transition game, it'll be interesting. So I think the two keys that it's going to be the difference between St. Thomas and Eastridge is transition and discipline.
Agreed. You touched on Eastridge before we move on. You touched on Eastridge polls. They do get all three of their close defensemen back, and so at a minimum, you got three guys who are experienced and played a lot of minutes last year. They
Yep.
do have to replace their two LSMs that I saw on the roster. They might have someone else who got some minutes as well, but that will be interesting. And kind of like looking back at 2023 with that Lakeville North team that had a stacked attack group and a really good faceoff guy, and they just kind of had those abilities to just all of a sudden jump 3, 4, 5 goals on you and kind of put teams like emotionally out of the game.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be Eastridge's game. I mean, that's how I would do it if I had this team, is just try to like really leverage that fast scoring runs. But I 100% agree with you on STA. Make it a tough game, make it a meat grinder, slow it down. And I think that can frustrate a high flying team like Eastridge.
CDH, the number 3 seed of Section 3 last year. This is a team that's in DTA Nation. They had a goalie performance a couple of years ago now that was one for the books in the state tournament. I've got one player that I need to get out there, that I need to ask about. I won't even quote what I've heard, but I've heard some high praise for this player. I'll say that. This is it Navanti, not
Novotny.
I don't have eyes on him. I heard he transferred late from Stillwater last year. That could be a Stillwater conversation. I won't open that. But transferred from Stillwater to CDH. I heard this kid's nasty. I don't have any really further details on this kid, but what do we know about his game? Because I've heard some questionably high praise about this player.
I like Novotny quite a bit. I think that he is a tall, athletic player, and he can use his athleticism to his advantage. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares. I think that one thing last year is that with Nate Charlton, the third of the Charlton brothers, he fed a lot of goals to both Runyon and Novotny. But yeah, I'm curious. I like Novotny's game a lot. I think he's a very talented player, and I'm curious to see what he can do this season as a more mature player. So
as we continue this breakdown, another point that I remembered, Chase Childs took the Gopher job.
Yep.
I believe he was the offensive coordinator. Is that gonna make a big change to this offense, to this team, or do they hire a new offensive coordinator? I'm not sure. What's going to be that adjustment as Jace leaves that program.
They snagged one of Eastridge's JV coaches in Brian Sang. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with him taking the reins on their offensive side. What kind of schemes they have. So the one thing I can say about Cretin, and I've always admired about Cretin, is they kind of are private school, but they have public school grit. I don't know. I did a goalie clinic for them a handful of years ago, and two of the dads that dropped their kids off showed up in work vans. So I can appreciate that a little bit. So, yeah, I think that they always have athletes. They always have kids that play other sports that they convince to say, hey, come play lacrosse. And I think that their strength is always athleticism. And as long as they play to that strength on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, I think that they'll be successful.
B-Willy touched on Matt Horrigan. I'm part of the Matt Horrigan fan club. He's just done a really great job at CDH over the years. I think he's a really great leader of people. And he gets the buy-in from the kids, and maybe he doesn't have maybe the depth or like all the players coming, year after year, but really maximizes the talent that he has. And I was unsure about CDH, but when I looked at it, you get the top 4 scorers back. You get Charlton back, who took 220 faceoffs at a 67% clip. He probably had like 2,000 ground balls that weren't.
He's not back.
He's not back.
He's out. He is playing. Juniors hockey for the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders.
So that
formerly of the Chicago Steel. So
yeah, so I know he's an elite hockey player, and you gotta do what you gotta do. That's gonna be a big loss for CDH, because he's kind of, in my words, the engine of that, the heart and soul of that team. But there's still a lot to work with. They get Alex Wad back, anchors the defense, but they lose a couple guys from their D lineup, and then the biggest loss, I think, Beck Lewis. Division I commit D-pull, who just happened to mess around with goalie last year.
So what's crazier? Orono girls lacrosse getting a starter out of their manager, during the scrimmage goalie warm up, or having a Division I D-pull step in and be their starting goalie?
That coin flip. But that being said, Beck Lewis is one of those. I think the manager thing is crazier because I feel like Beck is one of those naturally athletic kids where he could say, hey, Beck, you're going to play attack today, and he'd find a way to pot for. So that's my whole thing. My one thing I remember seeing with Beck, I think his junior year, I saw him in that lacrosse day in Minnesota over at White Bear. I watched him play Wayzata, and I watched it clear when he was on that back left side of the box on the defensive side and make just a perfect arcing pass to somebody coming right out of the box. It was awesome. That kid was a very underrated player. But so I would say the Orono manager is probably crazier considering Beck's one of those kids who would generally play well any position he was in.
Don't worry, she's playing hockey at Harvard, so she's not like a unknown. She's actually an athlete too.
Oh my
god. Yeah.
I was too qualified for Harvard. They didn't accept me.
Yeah. Not editing that out. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about CDH. I feel like there's maybe some question marks, but I've made that mistake before with CDH, kind of counting them out, and they always find a way to be a contender at some point at the end of the season and work with what they have. But certainly some names that they're going to have to replace. Yeah, that's what I got on the Raiders.
Hopefully they keep picking up those Stillwater transfers. No notes from Ted on Woodbury, but they were the 4 seed last year. Woodbury had a little bit of a down year. They were 6-9 last year. I know that their youth program, they've got some teams. I was coaching U12 last year. We beat Woodbury in the state championship. Not a big deal. So they've got something brewing in the youth program. I don't know if the U12s are ready to take varsity spots yet. What do we have on Woodbury looking at 2026? I think in 6 years, 2032, they're going to be a problem. What do we have in 2026?
I'm curious because they lost two senior goalies who both went on to play. One's playing at Elmhurst and one's playing at Maryville. They lost Max Henry, they lost Quinn Olson, and they lost a plethora of other players. I'm curious to see what they're going to look like this year. I think they're going to be truly a totally different team. So it'll be interesting to see what they look like this year. I know that they have a couple of studs. Their goalie is pretty solid. That's coming in, Drew Baker. He's been able to learn from his senior players with with Evan and Jack. And then Gabrick Greenbaum. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And then MJ. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. It's PW something something something. But they're all solid players, and I'm curious to see what happens, especially losing a lot of leadership and a lot of points. One quick side note: their lefty attackman Max Henry, in his second collegiate game, scored a hat trick for Florida Tech. So good for him. Just give a little shout out to Max Henry. I've coached with him and worked with him in the past, so exciting to see the kid go on to the next level and, um, continue to be successful. So,
Couple, sorry for the miss on the notes. A couple things. Sam Sanchez, 53 points last year. He's coming back. He's a senior. It looks like they got Graham Tolke,
Toki.
10 points last year. So they do have a couple guys that played minutes, got points. After that, though, a lot of guys that had 1 or 2 points. So they will need to have some guys step up on the offensive end.
Yeah, I could do homework too and bring my own notes, but that's why we got Ted here. The 5th seed last year, our favorite team, our favorite guest, B-Willy, Hastings, the Raiders. I still want to play a game or something at your guys' stadium. I've seen pictures of it. Maybe a top stadium. I'm not sure. I heard parking there sucks. What do we have on Hastings in 2026?
When I win the lottery and demolish the Walgreens across the street and put in a parking ramp, we'll host a state tournament game. How does that sound?
It sounds great.
No, the parking is horrendous there, but we'll digress from the curveball of the stadium debate. I'm excited to see what a lot of my players do this season. I've got a solid group of seniors and juniors who have been playing together. They're kind of my last group of our last wave of youth before our resurgence of our youth teams. So going to be fun to see Noah Schwam play. He's going to go play at William and Jewell next season. So good for him. Good on him for getting that commitment. I'm excited to see what he can do. Tony Malesio is a solid player. Reached 100 points last year, not in a season, but 100 career points last year. Carter Hansen, another player who's sitting at like 93 points going into his junior season. So he's a solid staple, a very sneaky attackman, kind of finds space where there's not really supposed to be space. If you look at a lot of our goals last season, a lot of our goals were scored off of assisted players right on the crease, basically, or goals from the crease from attacking from X. Very fun. My defensive side, it'd be really exciting to see Grant Birkin start to play this year. It's only his second season playing lacrosse, but he was another one of those lineman football players or linebacker football players that we gave a lacrosse that can say, hey, do you know a pursuit angle? All right, then you'll be fine. Just don't cross-check somebody in the face. Yeah, and then Matt Byer, again, another player who's a part of this group of kids who has been playing together for a handful of years. Mason Hustings, Carter Schultz, all of these kids have been playing together basically since like 7th grade. So it'll be very rewarding to see this group of kids get an opportunity to play their senior year and get to play together. A lot of maturity over the last few years. I remember when they were all 8th and 9th graders and I was pulling my hair out, like, what am I going to do with these buffoons? But they've all kind of turned into responsible young men over the years, and with a little bit of elbow grease and spit shine, I think that they'll be a pretty polished machine, at least my hope, obviously. We got a big question mark with goaltending, so it'll be curious to see what that looks like going into this year. So yeah, I'm just excited to see what this season has in store for us. I'm always, in my head, my expectations are always pretty grounded. They're not too low or not too high. I'm understand where we stand. We're not world beaters, but I also know that every once in a while we can surprise some teams, and I kind of like being that. I've kind of said in the past that I like being the underdog, I like being overlooked and counted out. So,
outside of the top 5, does anything stand out to anyone? For me, I'm a Section 6 guy. I'm a South Suburban guy. Egan being in the South Suburban, stands out to me. My understanding is, last year I think they had a bunch of even maybe eighth graders rolling out there, ninth graders, underclassmen, probably a lot of freshmen, sophomores. I think it was uh, a not normal season for the Wildcats, but this is a team, as we've seen in even recent history, 2017. They can be electric when they're on fire. Their youth teams are starting to get back on track too. So, I don't know if it's this year. I don't know if it's a couple years from now. I think Egan's going to be back in the mix. I fully expect that. Anything else, from B-Willy or other sources here, for Section 3 teams.
Ted, you want to go and then I'll finish up.
Yeah, I think I'll just kind of piggyback on PMAC. I think to see Egan where they were last year felt a little off. And I agree with you. I think it was a combination of a younger team replacing some pretty star players and then some injuries piling up that it just kind of spiraled and not characteristic of the Egan that we kind of know. They do get their starting goalie back, and he's pretty solid. And I know he battled he was in and out of the lineup. So if he stays healthy, they got him and a couple of their scorers back too. So I think, and it sounds like that freshman group maybe, or maybe it's the sophomore group now, at Egan is also pretty talented. So I think you're right, PMAC. Maybe it's not this year, but in the next year or two, things are going to start to change back to the Egan of old.
I think there's too much there's too much of a legacy there for them to just 100% fall off the face of the earth. Like we were saying, I do know that there was some solid, like wasn't it their U14 team or something last summer was pretty crazy or something. I remember seeing some Viking goat scores that were pretty wild. So that's fun though. That's youthful. That's something to look forward to. That's something you can build off of. That's something you can resurge if your youth program's kind of floundering a little and buy into that. So that's always exciting, I think, when you're a team like that where you're young, youthful, and you're talented, where you can kind of build into it. Because, I mean, they might lick their wounds, but, I mean, if you have a bunch of 8th and ninth graders starting right now or playing varsity minutes, imagine how good they're going to be and how talented and how well-rounded they're going to be as players when they become juniors and seniors. I really like what is going on with St. Paul and Two Rivers. That coaching staff has done a pretty solid job. So to see them get competitive and play tight games, I mean, I think that their section tournament game against Cretan Durham Hall was a 3-goal game, and it was a lot closer than the scoreboard showed. And again, I think we always benefit. I think it's always, you want to say there's bottom dwellers, but it's always fun when most games are competitive in some way, shape, or form. Park, I'm sad to see what happened with Park, where they lost that attackman than Bradley Johnson. They have some talent coming up with like some freshmen and some 8th graders. I just don't know if they're ready yet. There's maybe one or two they're probably ready for varsity, but they're probably not quite there yet. And it's another one of those teams that in the back of your mind you always root for. I live in Cottage Grove, so in my mind, and when I grew up playing youth lacrosse, we did a lot of stuff with Cottage Grove, where a lot of our youth stuff when I played lacrosse and when the generation after me, a couple years after me played, we were kind of co-opted those first couple years. So Trimac, Trimac is something I've loved what Ben has done with their program, where they've been more competitive than they have in the past. You see them stepping up and you see them playing other teams. I think 2 years ago they won their conference, which is awesome to see them, be successful. To see these teams continue to kind of ebb and flow, and stay relevant. It's been interesting. And then lastly, Simley. I mean, I think they're in a very similar boat to us with Hastings, where there's been a resurgence with youth. Lujo, their coach, got a job at the Parks and Recs department, and now he runs lacrosse stuff there. So That's awesome.
you've been really positive here. You're pumping your section. Anything, as before we log off, just grinding your gears this off season.
I don't think so right now. I think we're in a good spot right now, I think, in this section. So
B-Willy, we're gonna miss you at the DTA Invitational. Are we gonna see you July 31st at the DTA Open?
absolutely. I have a title to defend. And I will give absolutely zero. You know what? No, I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna find time over the next 6 months to put in work with my golf game. And we will come back, and I will be a contributing member.
We'll B-Willy, I hope to see you before July 31st. Hope to see you at a lacrosse field here soon. And we'll for sure see you July 31st at the DTA Open.
Sounds good, P Mac. Sounds good, Ted. Thanks, boys, for having me.
See you, B-Willy.
Thank you.
And thank you to B-Willy from Hastings Lacrosse for coming on, being a source, and breaking down Section 3.
Yeah, always good to have his energy. A lot of positive things to say. I think he's proud of the work they're doing in their section, and there's a mix of kind of like blue blood programs and growing programs in that section. And I think he had a lot of great points.
It's the people's section.
People's section. Always
it's the people's section.
Should we just kick this over now to the girls' side with Rich Limpert?
Yeah, let's jump over to the girls' side. Then we'll come back and we'll kind of give our thoughts. We'll rank both the boys and the girls, and maybe rant about something. We'll see where the conversation goes.
Hey, DTA Nation, Ted here. We are excited to have Old Southern Barbecue riding with us again for the 2026 season. If you're craving great barbecue in the metro area, visit one of their 5 metro locations, or you can go onto their website, oldsouthernbarbecue.com, and order food from there. In addition, use DTA 15 to get 15% off any of their sauces, rubs, or merch in their online store. Now back to the show. And like to welcome Coach Rich Limpert to Down the Alley. He's here to discuss Section 3 girls lacrosse. Rich and I have known each other for a long time. He has been coaching for a long time. Most recently, an inductee into the Minnesota Lacrosse Hall of Fame, but currently the head coach at Eastridge Girls High School program, has coached at the college level with the Gophers, has coached Woodbury Boys, kind of has done it all, and also operates and owns the MAC, MN Athletic Club, which, I'm sure many of our listeners know as well from the club scene. So, Rich, welcome down the alley. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ted. Steve, thanks for connecting with me as many times as we had before we got started here. It's good to talk lacrosse with somebody who's passionate.
Absolutely. And likewise, it's good to reach out and talk to some of these people that I hear about and have met maybe once or twice, but actually make a connection is great. How long have you been at Eastridge as head coach?
Going into year 5 right now. So this will be the 5th season. Coached a couple years of hockey there. And now we're on the lacrosse side for the girls. This is my first 5 years of coaching girls after the Gopher men's and the Woodbury boys.
What was the transition like going from the boys or men's game to coaching girls, especially 2 of your own girls?
Yeah, honestly, it's a breath of fresh air. They're eager to learn. They'll run through a wall for you. They're really fun to coach, and they take instruction really well. And boy, they give it back to you. It's different. I wasn't sure what to expect. I'm surrounded by some other really fantastic coaches on the girls' side, and we just have a blast with it. So.
One thing I do want to add, I think it was 2 seasons ago, your Eastridge team was a 5 seed, I believe, in the section and made a run. And it's something we've referenced in these section previews over the years of, we talk about some dark horses in the section or some sleeper teams or watch out for this team. And your team that year, 2023, I believe it was, just kind of stormed through the section, being one of the higher seeds, or I guess higher, lower. I don't know how you would describe that, but one of 5 seed. I don't think has ever come out of any section, let alone a tough section like Section 3. So there, Eastridge will always have that stamp for me as a team that kind of was under the radar all year, and then made the run when the lights came on, kind of played your best lacrosse when it mattered.
Yeah, I think that's part of the process. And when we say, like, I think our tagline actually was that for that year was trust the process. And it wasn't about winning every game individually, but just doing things the right way. And then at the end of the year, everything would come together. So that was that season in a nutshell. We had a lot of girls that played hockey, a lot of girls that played soccer coming together that were just really good athletes. The team was super tight and gelled. A few of those girls are playing after college. I know Grace Stam is playing at the University of Minnesota, and Bella Mullins playing at University of St. Thomas. So they're still continuing. Annika's playing. My daughter Annika's down at Palm Beach Atlantic in her junior year. But girls that became passionate about the sport, it started to manifest in that year. And so I think it was all of those things, and then realizing that they weren't just playing lacrosse, they were actually lacrosse players at the end of that season.
That's really no, that's really good, and it kind of leads into a little bit of what I want to talk about. I've done a couple games for NSPN, both on camera and actually play by play, believe it or not. And Eastridge is kind of a vibe. There's a lot going on. Nice press box, nice concession stand area, which of course is really important to down the alley crew. Parents seem to be having a good time pregame, getting together. I'm sure drinking bottled water. But you have, and you mentioned a little bit, Mike Mullen, father from one of your former players. He's also a pretty big vibe as PA for the lacrosse program. Can you talk a little bit about Mike and what he brings to the table as far as hyping the crowd up?
Yeah, so Mike was in the same position I kind of am in now. Bella was one of our top players. She was a captain. She did so much for the team, and Mike was up in the booth. Mike brings a ton of experience. He's just so natural up there. He makes it fun. He keeps the hype during the games. He takes a little bit of extra time on even the opposing team and gives them props for recent accolades, things like that. Senior night call outs to their seniors when we're doing ours. So he kind of includes everyone. But we had to reach back out to him after Bella graduated saying, hey, would you want to stay with the program and continue to do what you're doing? And his daughter, Bella, is coaching with us now. So
Oh,
she's a
nice.
member of our staff. He's essentially just an extension of our staff and up in the booth. So he's well versed on who we're playing and all the other teams. But that's really kind of the vibe here right now. A lot of our girls are coming back to then coach now. So Annika is down. She'll be coming back to coach after her Palm Beach Atlantic season. Bella will be coming back to coach after her St. Thomas season. So we're trying to build this up and get solid female leadership in there for the future years. And he's kind of part of that, trying to extend this and make it a year after year program and not just a 1 year coaching staff.
Do the players have any input into their nicknames that he uses, or is that all a Mike Mullen production?
That's a Mike Mullen production. Some of them kind of come out on their own, and things happen that generate some of those nicknames. But Mike puts some time and thought into them.
Yeah, he does, and he's got a very good soundboard and playlist for the games. Talk a little bit about last year, 2025 team. What was the team like? Did it achieve what you're hoping for? I know your daughter graduated and has moved on, Akira, to join her sister at Palm Beach Atlantic. Talk a little bit about last year before we hop into what it looks like for this year.
Yeah, last year was on paper at the beginning of the year. I thought, this is it. Like we're kind of we're really solid in all of the different various positions. And as the season started going, we had two of our defenders that weren't able to join the team at all for the whole year, and two of our main ones. That was Califories and Lane Stewart. They were both injured with severe injuries that kept them out for months on end. And then we had, Kira she blew up her ankle against Lakeville South. I think at the time that happened, we also had two girls that had just recently gotten hurt. So all in all, it was 7 girls out of our starting 12 that never got to be on the field at the same time, which, you know what, that happens in sports, but it usually doesn't happen with seven. Maybe it'll happen with two or three. So while last year we felt like it was our year, we didn't have all of those players together until the second half of the section game against Cretan. And that means those seven weren't together for practice. They weren't able to walk. They were in boots and crutches and knee braces and everything else. So the silver lining in that though is that we had seven girls that were able to step up and get those real minutes during real time for the whole season. So there may be a year in advance of where they would have been had all of those players been playing. So for us this year, it really does accelerate where we're at versus where we could be. So I mean, there are things that happen for a reason. You never want to see injuries happen, obviously, but you do want to see girls step up and take the lead and all of a sudden become part of that starting lineup and part of that mix. So we had that with 7 or 8 of the girls that were able to get in there. So looking forward to them returning.
Well, let's talk a little bit about then those returners. Like who should we be looking out for on the Eastridge side for this year, especially kind of filling the space and vacuum that like Kira, who was even injured for a good chunk of the season, was a mega producer for your team.
Yeah, I would look at our captain. Our leadership on this team is fantastic, and the culture is deep. I mean, so it's really the leadership. When I say that, there's some girls that are on that leadership group that aren't mentioned with the captains. I'll start with the captains. The captain is Addie Fitzgerald, and she's really the heart and soul of the team and leads everyone by example. And then we've got Macy Shabaka as assistant captain with Josie Ramsden and Morgan Kittleson. Really great kids, great families, and they're developing into fine young leaders, and that's what we're looking for. There's a core of those players that are really at the front of every practice, every game. Chloe Garrett would also be one, and Califoris, who was injured last year and now is able to come back. Those girls are, the older group. But then we have Cami Shabaka, Maddie Larson, in that draw circle, and then I'm really excited for Avery Nelson to get her time in net. Fantastic goalie. I think people will start hearing about her as things go on. But yeah, this season's going to be fun. You get to be real tight with these families and the girls and the coaching staff and all the different things we do, and to see them be able to come into the season healthy and contribute, it'll be an awesome season. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and if everyone was paying attention, there's two different Shabakas, Macy and Cami. Cami's a 28 who was the third leading scorer on the team. So some youth returning, but also had some little bit of production and experience, filling those roles,
Yeah.
probably left open by all those injured players last year. This is a section 3 preview, but we're a little South Suburban heavy here between Ted, PMAC, Katie, and myself. You're not. You're Suburban East heavy, and so let's maybe transition a little bit, and if you want to talk a little Suburban East Conference and what that's like and what that means. We can run through last year's standings. Number 1 was Park, 2 Stillwater, 3 CDH, 4 was Roseville, one of the darlings of the podcast last year. Eastridge came in at 5. Then it was Woodbury, White Bear, Mounds View, Forest Lake, and Irondale to do a quick summary of the Suburban East. What's it like playing a conference like that? That's half of the state semifinals are in the top of your conference. That's no joke.
Yeah. Well, I can say this: our conference is fairly tight as far as the coaches go. We communicate. I think when I came in on the boys' side, it was the year following when I was with Woodbury. Woodbury and Park were together coming in to the state high school league. So we were one program, and we would flip-flop back and forth whether we were at Woodbury or we were at Park. When I started on the boys' side, Scott Leonard started this 19 seasons ago. This would be 20, but 19 seasons ago, Scott started coaching on the girls' side. So he had our Woodbury / Park girls, and I had the Woodbury / Park boys. So we started coaching together for a long time. We've stayed tight. Obviously, he's left a legacy there, and they were essentially undefeated last year throughout the whole season. He has left this in great hands. He's got Bailey Anson, who's taking over for him. One of the things I would mention about them, if you don't already know, is their defense is just airtight, which is obvious. If you look at their scores, they'll be low-scoring games. They'll put up a few goals, but they won't allow many. So It looks like hockey scores when you're looking at some of those. Sometimes they start throwing up numbers, but I would doubt that Bailey lets that slide or changes anything. I'm sure she had a part in it last year, so that I don't think that'll change. When you look at Stillwater, Carly's got that team dialed every year. Carly Fedorowski, fantastic person, great coach. The kids on that side are absolutely part of that program, not just playing for it, but they help build it and they pass it down to the youth. It's really fun to see. Phil Roach in Woodbury has just started. This is his second year. Actually, him and I are quite tight in these things and how we're setting things up. We're actually running preseasons together and doing some things off off with Bailey as well, like preseason scrimmages in that first couple weeks. So yeah, the SEC conference is different. I think we all try to work together to build the game and try and get more girls playing. And so then it becomes iron sharpens iron during the regular season. So yeah, it's definitely a good crew. I think there's a lot of really invested people in there, and the girls are benefiting from it.
Well, transitioning a little bit, you didn't mention it in the conference talk, but we kind of in the section talk, CDH, number 3 in the conference and 2 in the section. What do you expect from Jeff Rosga and the CDH crew?
Yeah, Jeff. Well, I was actually getting ready to talk about that
Okay,
because it was kind of a
sorry.
twofold deal, but yeah, it's back and forth. I mean, if you're looking for like a Vikings Packers rivalry for us, that's us and Cretan. Although Jeff and I talk quite a bit offline, and my daughters and the Rosga girls stay in touch all the time. So it's going to be another great season for them. Jordy's a fantastic player, and she's got a supporting cast. It's very good, and you know that's always something where we're going to have to plan for. That's a different game than playing park for sure. I mean, both are physical, but they're physical in different ways. I think the Cretan games become run and gun, and the park games become more like a defensive standoff. Who can hold out the longest? So yeah, that group is always we're rivals certainly when it's on the field, but we do kind of communicate again, offline and about how the season's going on while we're moving towards those SEC battles.
So you just reminded me of something about defensive battles. Was it last year or 2 years ago that you and Eastridge and Park had like a 6 overtime game?
Yeah,
Was it last year or 2 years ago?
it was 2 years ago.
I called that one. It was at Park, I think, and I called that one for an SPN, and it just kept going and going and going and going.
Well, yeah, and they called it six overtimes, right?
Yeah,
But that was 12
yeah,
because they were
yeah,
saying like it was like three
yeah,
minutes and then we'd switch ends and then another 3 minutes. That equaled one overtime.
yep.
Well, that's a stop and a start again. So it was forever. It seemed like it was way longer than that even, but that was a grind that could have gone either way. I think we counted back on the film that there were 7 pipes hit in that extra session, not during the game. It was back and forth. Uh, yeah, so that could have gone either way, but again, it was fun. When we got done with it, there was no shame in that. Everybody had left it all on the field, but that's kind of how those things go.
Yeah, I think that was the first game I ever did play by play for, and then it just kept on going, and I just had run out of things to talk about. So it
Yeah.
was just a lot of silence at the end of that game watching it happen. So what is your outlook for Section 3? We didn't talk St. Croix Prep. They're not in your conference. Probably the next layer in on teams in Section 3. What's the outlook that you have for, as we call them, the hedge fund?
Yeah, this one's tough. I thought about it a lot knowing that I was going to be on here. And obviously Park CDH are at the top, but St. Croix Prep is coming. I mean, that's a program that's been developing. They're doing all the right things. I would say it's really going to come down to how well we prepare and like we saw last year, who's going to stay injury free. Because you always have a plan when everything's sitting right and you have all the personnel, but then all of a sudden, you might be out of 3 or 4 players and you have to get people in that are exploring and learning for the first time on the fly. I'd say the best part about what we've done to prepare for that is this year. I mean, we're returning. We have Marty Myers and Dave Garrity are returning. We've added two of my former Gopher players, Brad Dubbing from Egan and Briley Larson, to our coaching staff from the men's lacrosse team. I think the more well-versed coaches that we have on the field working with the girls can get everybody prepared for those injuries. Emma Fetch is returning. She's also a multi-sport athlete, played lacrosse and hockey. She played hockey in college. Joe Rozier is returning to the staff. Bella Mullen, as I said before, and Annika Limpert coming back in. But we've also added another former multi-sport athlete that played hockey after high school, and that's Sydney Helmbrecht, and should be working with our goalies. So I think in order to be ready for this, we've got to get our staff ready, and so that we can adjust any changes. So we've got a fairly large staff, and we are planning on having everything run as one organization. So instead of two small rosters that are separated by what we're planning, maybe running two different playbooks. If you come to one of our practices this year, you'll see what looks like a college practice with one full unit, varsity and JV together from top to bottom. I think we learned our lesson last year of having it separate and then having to essentially take half of the JV team and plug them in halfway through the year and have to teach everything at one time. That's the rationale for what we're doing this year, and our coaches are going to own their positions. So it's really kind of exciting to put this together.
What are we missing about section 3 that we haven't talked about? What's the hidden gem? What's the diamond in the rough?
I'd say there's so much turnover in the coaches this year that it's going to be how fast girls can get up to speed with what the coaches bring in. I think stability is going to be king here. I think there's a lot of star players that are coming up that are yet to really bust onto the map as far as names that you'll see, but you'll see them this year. I mean, they're going to have to carry the torch. I mean, when Park loses Maddie Brinkman and Josie Leonard, that's a lot of points moving. But they've got people that are ready to step up and fill those, and I think that's the exciting piece. And that's the piece that you're missing that we haven't talked about. We don't know yet. Those girls are coming. We're going to have that on our team as well. I mean, those 7 girls got to step in and play for injured players for most of the year. You're gonna start hearing their names more on podcasts like this on Down the Alley about 3 months from now, right before we get going.
We can't wait. I know you gotta get going here. We've stolen a little bit of your time here before your next gig, watching your son play hockey. So I'm gonna let you go, and really appreciate the time and coming on and talk a little lacrosse. And good luck this season. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a ton, Steve. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah,
Looking forward to seeing this whole thing. I can't wait to look at to watch B-Willy's section on this.
Yeah. We'll get it up, and we appreciate you coming on and giving us kind of that inside look. And it was nice seeing you.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Take care.
Take care.
And thank you to Rich Limpert for breaking down section 3.
Yeah, it was great. Rich was a little strapped for time, had a little hockey engagement that he had to get to, so that's why we had to shuffle things around. But he was really excited to talk about lacrosse, especially section 3 lacrosse. Really well prepared, really knowledgeable, and set us up great to kind of break it down here so we can go through the picks.
Yeah, I echo that. Rich always has a lot of insight into what's going on in the girls' game, but also just across the state, lacrosse in general. He's been around a long time. He's a steward of the game for sure. So appreciate him coming on and giving us some of his time to break it down.
Yeah, I know Rich. Not surprised. He was a great guest. Happy he was able to come on and give some insight into the girls. Before we break down the girls, since I have nothing to add on the girls' side, let's talk about the boys. How do we want to rank this thing out? And then I'm going to let you guys tell me about the girls so I know how to rank that situation first. The boys' side, I'm kind of battling between. I know how these top 2 teams. I don't know how to pick these 2. I'm gonna go with the flashy group. I'm going to go with the public school. This shouldn't surprise anybody. I'm going to go Eastridge at 1, STA at 2, and this is where things get interesting again. I think with some recency bias, we're talking the fan club for Coach Horrigan. I'm gonna stay. Maybe I'll join it. I don't know. Maybe he won't want me if I'm just ranking him 3. Maybe he'll be like, no, you're not allowed to be a part of my fan club. I'm throwing CDH at 3, and B-Willy's getting my DTA bump. Hastings at 4. Should they be there? I'm not sure, but I know B-Willy. I know the energy he's going to bring, day after day, week after week, and that's half the battle. Do you have a coach that's going to show up? Do you have a coach that's going to bring the energy? Do you have a coach that's all in? Hastings has a coach that's all in. That I do know. So I'm going Hastings at 4, and that's going to round out my top 4 for Section 3 boys lacrosse in 2026.
Yeah, I'll go. I have kind of similar sentiment. I think the top 2 with Eastridge and STA, I think are the clear 1 and 2, at least going into the season, especially with the news that broke that Charlton will not be playing for CDH. I'm gonna give STA the 1. They surprised me with how much they had coming back. So I'm gonna go STA 1, Eastridge 2, CDH 3. This is where things get interesting for me. I think Hastings, Woodbury, even Egan all kind of have, and then even St. Paul Two Rivers all have some, potential to be that 4. I'm gonna stick with the blue blood in Woodbury for my number 4. That was when I was crossing things out and re-adding for that 4 spot, but I am going to stick with Woodbury.
So you're going no changes. You're going 2025. Hey, we're going to run it back in 2026.
Run it back in 2026. Probably not the section to do that with. I feel like this one always is just completely different, but I'm going to zig when other people zag. I'm just going to run the 2025 rankings right back down. STA, Eastridge, Creighton, Woodbury.
All right, I struggled with the top 2, obviously between STA and Eastridge. Coming into the pod, I had Eastridge 1, STA 2. Read Ted's notes, did a little looking, flipped them around. B-Willy convinced me to flip them back. I'm going Eastridge 1. I'm going the Academy, St. Thomas Academy 2. CDH is my 3. That kind of seems pretty stock. Number 4 was interesting. I wanted to say Egan mostly so I can hear PMAX say Egan.
Some South suburban bias there.
Egan is Egan. I wanted to hear that again some more. We didn't hear that enough last year. A little South suburban bias, but B-Willy is positive, and he's my guy. And I wrote down Hastings as my number 4. So Eastridge, St. Thomas Academy, Creighton Durham Hall, and Hastings.
There you go. That rounds out the boys' picks. Over to the girls.
Yeah, I was gonna say over to the girls. I don't know how to tee this up. I missed I've got some notes that I'm ripping through right now. Missed a source, missed the news, so I'm coming in a little blind.
Let's rip through
I'm gonna kick it over to you, Source. Hopefully, I can gain something before I have to choose.
Well, let's rip through the top couple teams here and talk about them a little bit, and then we'll do picks. Park last year 18-1. They lost to Stillwater in the state semifinals 11-10. They beat Stillwater in the regular season 7-6. Fantastic year for Park. They won the 3rd place game against Lakeville South 15-5. So fantastic year. Really ended up being the number 2 team going in the state tournament, and it was a fantastic year. They lost 3 big players. Maddie Brinkman, 83 points, 95 draw controls, going to Missouri Western, or she's there now. Josie Leonard, Colorado Springs now, 81 points and 105 draw controls. They were the offense. They lost a goalie. They split the halves for their goalie. They lost one of them, but they have another goalie coming back who's committed D3. So the big loss, but they have someone there. The big question that Ted and I kind of had for Rich was what is the defense going to look like? Park traditionally has played a really locked down, solid, grinded out game. And by all accounts, from Rich, that's coming back. And so they have the system. They have a bunch of young players coming back. They have a D1 commit in Lindenwood, Malaya McMorrow, 54 points coming back. They have another Brinkman, Little Brinkman, who is a 2029. She's had 21 points. So they have a few pieces. They have a goalie. They have a system. So Park is probably not going away.
My number 2 question about
Mhm.
this team, my number 1, right, is losing Leonard. My number
Well,
2,
two Leonards. They lost Coach
the
Leonard
coach,
and player
the,
Leonard.
the coach Leonard.
Hmm.
What was said? What do we know about the new coach? Were they a part of the staff? Was it an assistant? Is it a brand new coach that hasn't been here before? What do we know? Because that's my number 2 question. You lose Leonard player, then you lose Leonard coach. What do we have on the coaching side coming back?
I think Bailey was part of the program, so it's not totally ripped apart. And by all accounts, they're rolling. They're probably going to rely on that hardcore defense, maybe even more, just because they don't have the safety blanket that Maddie and Josie brought on the offensive side and on the draw circle. So I don't see a lot of their games changing, or the types of games that they play change. So it just they might struggle to find out who actually is their alpha on the offensive side to start the year. CDH is number 2. CDH was 12-4 last year. They lost to Park in the section final 11-10. So like no joke to lose to probably the number 2 team going into the state tournament by a goal. They lost 5 graduates led by Jane Stangler, who is out at Niagara. She was kind of a D midi-ish, 27 goals, 13 assists, and is playing, I think, straight up defense in Niagara this year. They bring back a couple of 28s. Jordan Rosga, who we've talked about a lot, phenomenal player, plays out east for club. Has big sister plays at Northwestern, not a big deal. Was at Maryland and transferred to Northwestern. She actually had a down year last year and only scored 75 points. She was in the hundreds the year before. But she has someone to kind of, I don't want to say Robin to her Batman, but Lily Sealander, another 28, kind of showed out last year with 37 goals, 18 assists, and 120 draw controls. So they're a 1-2 punch that's going to be hanging around CDH for a while, or at least they should be. Lily, I assume her older sister Lucy is down at Lindenwood now, had a hat trick in their last game against your Eastern Michigan squad PMAC. So yeah, kind of, a lot of young pieces coming back. They had a goalie who was a 29 last year, played the whole season at varsity. So she's a freshman this year, 6.1 goals against average, 81 saves. That would be Carolyn Leclerc. Kind of an interesting squad. They have other pieces just because they're CDH, they got athletes. So I'm kind of looking at a CDH if you can't tell.
Hey, let's jump into the votes. I'm starting to get the vibe. What do you have for your top 4 source?
I'm going CDH 1. Going Park of Cottage Grove 2. Easter Drafters 3. Hedge Fund number 4. St. Croix Prep.
I'm very similar to you. I got CDH at 1, mainly if you have one of the best players in the state on your team, maybe the best player in the section. I don't know. That could be debatable.
Is Rosga the stud of the section?
I was gonna say, who's the stud of the section? We got to do that for the boys too. Razga's the stud of the section still.
Okay, we'll answer the boys side in a little bit.
So, yeah, if you have a player like that, I think I'm going to give the nod to CDH as a 1. I'm going to go Eastridge 2. I think they have a nice returning core. And mainly because Park, to me, it's not that they aren't going to have a chance to win the section. I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve to start the season with figuring out the offense. They didn't score a lot of goals as is, But when you lose two superstar players from your offense, they might get caught with some low scoring games. But once that gets figured out, I think they're going to be a dangerous team. I have them at 3 from a seeding perspective. And then I have St. Croix Prep at 4. I think they have some pieces returning as well. So I got Cretin, Eastridge, Park, St. Croix Prep as my top 4.
I agree that number 2 and 3 can flip flop either way.
Yeah.
It's gonna be close, I think.
I'm gonna Groot's flapping here a little bit. Sorry if you heard that. CDH, I'm riding with you guys. Sign me up for that. I will follow your guys' lead on CDH. Heavy bias on my number 2. We're going to hedge fund. We're going hedge fund at number 2. I know they lost some things according to my notes. They lost some points to graduation.
Yeah, but they got stuff coming back, so it's not outlandish.
Eden Lothenbach.
Yeah.
Sign me up. She was pushing 60 points last year. I think she's going to be pushing 100 this year. Watch out. And I'm going to fade Park a little bit. You're losing the coach, losing the coach's kid. I'm going to go Eastridge at 3. Maybe a DTA bump, having the guest. I don't know. We'll go Park at 4. Keeping kind of the top 4 intact, but I'm going a different, direction with it a little bit than you two.
There you have it. The picks. Started the section for boys to go back.
That's a good question. We didn't really touch on that at all with B-Willy, other than, so I asked you, Ted, and I brought him up. What was his name from CDH?
Yeah, Austin Novotny. I think he's in the conversation. I would have gone Charlton if he was playing, but Novotny is certainly up there. I think Luke Hudson from STA is another one to consider. And I think Alex Wad from CDH is another one on the defense.
So I like Wad on the defensive side. He's someone I've actually seen play, coached a little bit, good athlete. Now he's an upperclassman, D1 commit. I think Wad's definitely in the conversation on the defensive side.
Yeah, Caden Barron, Air Force commit attackman from Eastridge, I think is up there. I think there's a lot of options. There's a lot of high-end talent in this section. If I had to pick, if I'm being forced to pick, I think I'd go Novotny from Cretin.
Would you?
Yeah, I think I would. Just
over the Eastridge attackman, all 3 of those.
An eye test, but I think it's very close.
Okay. I'll follow your lead on that.
Either way, I think all 3 of those guys deserve a shout out. And then on the defensive end, Wad for sure deserves a shout out. I think he's a stellar player as well.
Okay. And that does it for section 3. The people section, both on the girls and boys, I think it's just a normal year for section 3. I think there's a lot of teams in the mix. It could go a few different directions. From what I'm reading, mostly a little bit of what I've heard so far, girls could go a few different ways. Who's going to step up? And you could say that about the boys too a little bit. We've got a couple teams that we think are going to compete for it, but what does CDH have? Who's going to come in that top 4? I think that 4 spot's wide open. So the boys side, I think, is going to be interesting too. I don't think there's a clear cut, maybe, favorite, by a mile, right? So it's the people section. I think this one's going to be wild, as it is every single year in this section. Well, thanks for tuning in. Section 3 next week, obviously section 4, ready to dive into that. Fired up about the Invitational this weekend, and stay tuned if you're a subscriber of our newsletter. We'll be sending out information on the DTA Open teaser. Start marking off July 31st. If you're into golf, if you're a part of DTA Nation and you want to golf at the Open, we're going to be on Friday, July 31st. It's going to be an absolute time. We're going to be back outside, great weather, perfect conditions, and getting some fresh air on a Friday. So fired up for the Open here as we roll out the plans for that here. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See you
See you
later.
boys.